Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Thetford Town Council Finance Committee meeting being held Tuesday, 15th of February, and starting at 6 o'clock, perfectly on time. We'll head straight into 75421, which is declarations of any disclosable pecuniary interest to receive any additional interest not already registered. Obviously, if anything should come to light during the course of our discussions, please feel free to indicate. We then move on to 75521, which is apologies for absence, please, Mr. Crimham.
Yes, Councillor Hollis.
Thank you. Otherwise, we've got a full house, so lovely to see you all. 75621 is the minutes of the last meeting to confirm the minutes of the committee meeting held on the 18th of January, which were received by full council on the 25th of January as a true record. You've had all of these previously, both at full council and prior to this meeting. Any questions, queries or comments? There are obviously just 2 pages, well, 3 pages. This is a little bit at the bottom.
No.
Are we happy with those?
Yes.
Super. I'll sign those as a true, fair reflection. We'll then move on to 75721, which is the contracts update. To note the attached schedule of contracts. Again, you've had these previously. Any questions or queries, please, team? No, super. Duly noted, and moving swiftly on. On to 75821, which is the committee financial decisions. To note the attached schedule of financial decisions reached in the other committees. Obviously, this only goes to January 2022, because as good as Alan is, he can't preempt any decisions that may have been made in the last couple of days. Any questions, queries or comments on that, please, team?
Is any update on the tree?
Not at this stage, unfortunately. The tree. I presume you're referring to the civic tree rather than the sleeping tree that we had in King's Gardens.
Yes.
Yes, no, no further update further than what was shared at the Heritage Committee last week before. It's a blur. What I would highlight is the urgent play park repairs that are noted on there, and you will have noted on the contracts update, because they are health and safety, that requirement supersedes any financial regulations on that side of things, just to draw that to your attention.
Can I just say that's also the cemetery lighting?
Okay.
That was put under health and safety as well.
And the cemetery lighting is where, please? That decision was made when? If you're talking about a meeting that was in February, they're not on our listing yet.
In February.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
That will come to this committee next month, as I said.
Oh, it's on that list, isn't it?
I'm
probably on the wrong
long list.
yeah, so
So, committee financial decisions duly noted, team?
Yeah.
Excellent. So we then go on to 75921, which is the approval of payments. To receive and approve the attached listings of payments made since the last meeting. Again, Alan has highlighted and given us a breakdown of some of the making of payments and the exclusions to standard operating procedure, as it were. And then the requirements as per financial regulations, and it's recommended that the making of these payments be approved by this committee and recommended to full council. Do I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Tullett. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Wonderful. Thank you very much. We then move on to 76021, which is the financial report for the 10 months to to the 31st of January 2022. I'm going to stop talking now and hand over to you.
Thank you. If we just start by looking at the summary, you'll see that we have in the January 22 variance column, you'll see that there's a green figure of 90,060. So we are forecast to operate at a surplus. I must state that 68,000 of that relates to the Heritage Lottery Fund. We incurred all the expenditure in the previous financial year and the grant has come in this year. And we had, in our projected budget, we had actually set aside to put that back to reserve. So at the moment we're sitting with about a £32,000, sorry, £22,000 if I do my maths right, 69 from 90,000. And we've forecast that might grow up to as high as 40,000 in the remaining months, but we do have a contingency in the sense that we might have to fund the Royal British Legion floor repairs, for which we have no money set aside to do that. So that's still going through a particular process. In terms of income, our income is higher at 92,422, is higher than budget. And again, that's mainly due to other income, which is sitting at 77,754 positive variance. On the expenditure side, amenities, we have overspent. We had to catch up a lot of work in terms of statutory work, various inspections, etc. We've also overspent a little bit on things like pay parks and on street furniture. There are savings in other committees. The biggest one at the moment is personnel, which is 22,135. However, we believe that we may have to make a provision for the salary settlement for 21-22, which hasn't been finalised yet. So that might erode most of that underspend, because we'll just have to do a calculation at the end of March if that figure hasn't been finalised. And it's unclear at the moment the way inflation is going. It could be a substantial amount of money, and there's also the back payment of it. So overall, we are doing okay, but it's just a matter of what we've had to do. For example, in amenities, is we've really curtailed expenditure. We're only ensuring that expenditure that's really critical gets incurred in February and March, and we'll start our budget fresh in 22-23. In terms of the other schedules, all they do is they give you more detailed explanation of the variances on the income side and the expenditure side. All those comments have gone through to the various committees, so they've been prepared, put into the committee papers. They've been circulated through that, and I haven't had any feedback, so I assume that the comments that have been made have been accepted by those particular committees. That's it.
So once again, thank you, Alan, for that detailed narrative on those sheets. I find it incredibly useful, and it's also a good reference point going back previously. Are there any questions or queries, please, team? In that case, may I have a proposer to accept this report? Thank you, Barbara. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Dennis. All those in favour? Super unanimous. We then move on to 76121, which is the project update and draft budget for 2022-23. So you will recall that we separated out our budget this year in terms of expenditure and projects, and obviously we approved the expenditure side of things in preparation for the precept setting back in November, and we promised you that we would bring back the projects update. Here we are. Any questions, queries or comments, please, team? What I would say is we're not requiring a decision on this, we're not requiring acceptance on this. It is to note the current status of the 2021-22 budget, and it's also recommended that we can also note the draft projects budget going forward. I understand that there's still a couple of things that we're ironing through and working out is there anything that you'd like to particularly say on this, Alan?
All the committees have, it's gone to most of the committees, I wouldn't say all the committees. We're having an internal management meeting on the 1st of March. We'll run through all the feedback from the committees and then we'll put through a final draft through all the committees that meet in March to bring it back to Finance and Full Council at the end of, during the March meetings.
Try to make it as simple as possible and break the two aspects out so it's potentially a bit easier to digest and also easier for the public to understand. Are there any questions or queries on this, please? In that case, duly noted, and thank you for all your hard work on this, Alan, because I know it hasn't been easy and has resulted in an awful lot of the SMT time as we have elastic time frames with some of the projects at the moment with challenges that are beyond our control. So we move on to 76221, which is a template for internal control review. This is to receive and discuss a template for the internal control review that is required by legislation and which is referred to in our financial regs. You've had this circulated previously, and what Alan and I agreed was that we would try and do a job well once and potentially utilise it a number of times. So what Alan fantastically has done is you'll see there that the annual governance statement that we fill in each year on that blue paper asks a number of questions. And the idea is through this we actually answer those questions and do a bit more of a deep dive in it. Alan, would you like to pick this up from there?
Sure. I think in the last couple of months I've actually gone down and found out what is this internal control review that they refer to in legislation. And I went and I researched what other local councils, parish councils are doing, and it's actually very difficult. Some do a very superficial type review. I don't think our review was that in-depth. So what I did is I actually found a parish council that had gone, I thought had started a good idea but hadn't fully developed it. And what I've tried to do is actually take that idea and fully develop it. So what we've done is we've taken all the assertions in the annual governance statement, we've broken it down into responsibilities. So there are responsibilities that the council does through its committees, there are responsibilities that the responsible finance officer, myself through the town clerk, both of us are responsible for, and then we've broken it down into what the internal audit does. And we believe that if we go through and structure a review where, for example, the council can look at what it does, look at those particular issues and say, yes, we're satisfied, we believe that this gives us the assurance that we need to make sure that there's a control environment. The review team would also then have a discussion with the town clerk, as responsible finance officer, and say, these are the things that we're relying on you to do. Are you actually doing it? How are you doing it? And then lastly, in terms of the internal audit, we can take the internal audit coverage plan and we can map it to these controls and say, yes, this is what the internal auditor do. And I'm hoping that at the end of that conclusion, as the chairman has said, what will happen is that when we table the governance statement in May, which we're hoping it's going to be this year, not June, we ask the council to approve it, the council will actually have some evidence to say, yes, we can approve the statement because these particular processes have happened. So it is a little bit of an still in an experimental stage, but I'm fairly confident that we would actually be able to do it. And for the first time, we'd have an evidence-based internal control review. Other councils do silly things like, other councils do different things. They get the councillors to do a little internal audit, for example. Or they just say, well, we have an internal audit, all we need to do is rely on that. And that actually is not quite the same. So I think this will actually work and it will give us the council the assurance that it needs at the end of the day. There will be a document, there will be a proper review, and that can be minuted by this committee and carried forward through to council.
Yes, Councillor Cannon.
Yeah, just a quick one there. I might have lost my thread because I don't know why my tablet keeps won't go onto the downpipes. I can't read that properly. Who's doing this? You are going to do the internal review.
No.
You're going to get somebody to come in and do an internal audit.
As per the agenda item, it is for this committee to say yay or nay to this template. If it is approved, this committee then nominates councillors that could undertake the internal control review before the 31st of March this year.
Okay.
In the past, we have had 3 councillors do it, 2 finance councillors, and then we've chosen 1 non-finance person, so that, and I know Councillor Canham has fulfilled that previously when you haven't been on this committee, so that effectively we're not self-assessing ourselves.
Yeah.
So there's that little bit of challenge, and what do you mean by that? Yes, Councillor
No,
Crawford.
not because it's just that I'm not also unable to put any more amendments on my computer. It won't do it. I won't open them up anymore.
Okay. I would suggest that if there's technical challenges, I think we need to speak to ICOSIS. After all, that's what we pay them for.
It did when it was at my house, but it stopped. And
Yeah.
the first part was open, but now it's stopped opening them.
It may be overwhelmed by your enthusiasm.
I think that's what it is.
Anyway, I'll have to read on that.
So we also have there the suggested format of the internal control review. Any further questions, queries or comments, please?
I think it was a really good schedule and laid out exactly what responsibilities for which area, and and as a template, it should hold us in good stead to say yes, we have the evidence to prove, things are as they should be, and highlight anything that is deficient.
Yeah, and I think it's incredibly important to have the AGS, the annual government statement, and this coming together. And I'm really pleased that it's something that we've tried to get happening over the last couple of years, and obviously it's all been a little bit interesting. So yes, hopefully it can result in an effective document, as I said, that can be used well and repeatedly, and will also feed into our internal auditors' review as well. So, if you'd like to approve it, may I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Councillor Canham. May I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Harvey. All those in favour? Sparkling.
Recommendation, Chair.
It's resolved.
Thank you.
So, if approved, which it has been, we now need to nominate councillors that could undertake the internal control review before the 31st of March 2022. Currently,
Stuart does the bank recon.
yeah, Stuart does bank reconciliation, so there need to be a division of labour. I would suggest that we stick with a format of 2 from this committee and 1 non-finance committee member, and that we ask full council for that. I am happy to stand on this to put myself forward, so if I can have 1 further volunteer, please.
I'll volunteer.
Thank you. Is everybody happy with that?
Yes.
Super. So,
I might need guidance there.
well, I think it would
It'd be self-evident. Wouldn't it?
yeah, I think that would be really good. So, are we in agreement that we ask full council for a non-finance councillor to join in this, or do we want to just? Do we have to have a non-finance?
No.
What do you want to do?
For transparency and everything, should we have another one?
We could. I'm just mindful that we've got a meeting to get in the next month.
Ah, right. So by doing it within, we'd be able to do it quicker then, yes.
Hopefully.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
We can offer it to full council, and if there's no willing victims, volunteers,
We carry on.
we carry on.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Harvey.
I would be quite happy to just to do that going to someone else, to be fair.
Councillor Canham.
I was going to say something different, sorry, Chris.
Yeah,
I was going to agree with Dennis for transparency, and also they can take that back to the, take that information back to their own committees as well. Say, well, actually, I did look at this, and this. Even if it's only hearsay between them, it's a bit of transparency. But I would offer it. You might get no takers.
Okay.
I'm happy with it.
So what I'm guessing then, I'm hearing is this committee would like an invitation to non-finance committee councillors to join us in the internal control review meeting to be held before the 31st of March 2022. Are you proposing that, Dennis?
Yeah, I'll put that. I did have one. Can we contact all the councillors before the meeting so that we see if we have a volunteer come forward?
We can put an email.
Because it's not something that needs a decision of full council, is it, as such, if somebody's volunteering? So
Not really.
if we went forward with the suggestion, would you like to do it?
We will send an invitation.
Thank you.
We will send an invitation out tomorrow, and then that negates the need to bring it up at full council,
Absolutely.
unless we
Sarah.
don't get a willing victim volunteer.
Yeah.
Was there a second of it, Dennis? Thank you, Brenda. Thank
And
you.
are we all happy with that?
Yes.
Fabulous. Yeah, everybody's in agreement with that approach. Excellent. Just add to the list of things to do, so now. So we move then on to 76321, which is the updating of financial regulations. You've all, pardon me, apologies. You've all received the report on the updating of financial regulations. I would ask you to review and approve these and perhaps consider any further amendments that should be made. Just had a thought. Is this a recommendation to full council because it's financial regs rather than it being resolved here at committee?
My thinking of doing it this way was to say, if this committee is happy, I will put this into the final document. It gets approved at the next finance committee, and the next finance committee will recommend it to full council to start 1st of April.
That sounds like a plan.
So this is just to actually approve.
For this committee to consider
This committee goes
proposals.
To consider these proposals.
Yeah.
So any questions or queries relating to the suggested updates, and you've also got the reasonings there as to why we're doing it.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they all seem to make good sense of why they need to be done and to improve the timescales of how the budgets are managed throughout the year, to make sure they're done in a timely manner.
Yeah, and we found that there's been a little bit of a lag between the financial regs being updated and actually our practices moving on, especially in terms of the electronic signing. You know, that was expedited because of the pandemic, and actually now it's really good practice and we're paper free. So it ties in with our environmental priorities as well. So it's just bringing practice it up to date, and just saying we're actually doing what we're doing rather than being a conflict. So if you're happy for these amendments, what we will do is then draft them into the full financial regs, and then those amendments, the full financial regulations, will be presented to this committee to review and then potentially recommend to full council at the end of March.
Good.
Are we all happy with those amendments?
Yes.
Okay, super. So moving on to 76421, the update on the investment strategy, to receive an update on the investment strategy and to review the implementation dates. You've all received the pretty pictures, lots of colours. Alan, is there anything that you would like to particularly highlight to the committee on this one?
I think we've got two challenges. The one is that as we undertake projects and as we retain our portfolio balance, the skew of investments is getting worse over time because we're actually using all our cash to fund operations and to fund project expenditure. We're not actually doing it proportionately. So in 1 year, if we have £100,000 worth of projects, say in the last 2 months, we would have funded that from our surplus in cash investments. We won't have touched the portfolio. So there is it's becoming out of skew, and that really was identified as a risk, and you'll see that it's in red there because we haven't made progress. So it really is an issue that we have to really address and see how we institutionalise that, because we can't, we're going to end up in a situation where non-liquid investments are so high that we won't be able to do anything until we sell. We don't necessarily want to sell off when we, and you know, if the market takes a little bit of a crash, that's not when we want to be selling off. So we do need to institutionalise this a little bit. We have done fairly well in terms of protecting other types of investment. I have to admit, obtaining credit rating reports and making sense of them is not my forte. So I subscribe to I get an email every day from one of the credit rating agencies, and I have to admit I really don't understand most of what they actually say. So I have to find a simpler way to do that, to find what is a good benchmark in terms of understanding credit rating, because they have short-term, medium-term, and long-term, and we need to I need to think about what are we going to assess and incorporate that into the next review of the investment strategy. But generally, you know, we've also got to look at the appointment, because we've been using the same stockbroker for many years, and is it, you know, we've kept our portfolio in such a way that we could actually change the portfolio manager quite easily. We haven't gone for a bundled package. So in other words, our stockbroker hasn't put together their kind of unit trust, and we've bought into that, where we wouldn't be able to move that around from one stockbroker to the other one. But we really do have to address that, because, you know, we could be seen, you know, I'm not too sure whether we should just go out and see what service we'll get, etc. And that was it. I also try to track the portfolio performance, and I'm going to ask another technical person. I might ask the chairman to review my calculations, because I've calculated that we actually haven't done as well against the FTSE 100 as possibly we should have. So our the FTSE 100 has gone up quite substantially, and our share portfolio in value hasn't gone up that substantial. So to maybe just get someone to look at my calculations and at least challenge me, because I'm putting those figures down, but I wouldn't kind of bank too much of my own personal kind of reputation on these figures. So I will ask someone just to have a review of them and make sure that on the basis of my calculation is credible.
Any questions, team?
We're asking just to note this, so
Yes.
we're not making any decisions today.
No,
So
just
I did hear a good decision.
yeah. So we have an investment strategy.
Yes.
We agreed that a little while ago, and this is a reporting and an update on it and telling you where we're at.
So, Chair, so in the future, can we have an agenda item where we look into what's happening, just not note it, but actually look into seeing whether we need to change our portfolio in itself, or the people who manage it for us or something?
So we've actually set our targets previously. So this is a reporting on how we're faring against them. Some we're doing well, some we're not doing so well on. In terms of the portfolio, there's a couple of items there. My question would be to this committee is, do you want to invite our portfolio manager to present to committee? I'm mindful that it's been quite some time since we last saw them. Obviously, again, last couple of years, I think. Yeah. But I think it's been a good 4 years since.
Can we do that then? Chair?
If that is this committee's desire, then I think it would facilitate the conversations regarding this really well.
Thank you.
Would we all like that?
I think it'd be a good idea.
Yeah. So if I... Another job for your list, sorry.
Could I ask when you would like to do it? Would you like to do it in April, or would you like to do it in March? Because March is quite a tough...
I was going to say, yeah, March is quite so...
I would perhaps suggest April, thinking of the forward work plan and what we've got coming up on the March agenda.
Absolutely.
Be kind to you.
Yes.
And then potentially what we can do is ultimately either do it via video call or outside of this meeting, as it were, to facilitate it a bit easier. And perhaps, encourage them. Is that okay? So any other questions or queries or points for clarification on that at all? Report duly noted, and thank you for your work on this. I know it's It's been challenging to say the least. So we then move on to 76521, which is the update on finance officers' reforms. To receive and note the attached finance officers' reforms. Councillor Cannon, this one's for you. There are changes. There are greens. Over to you, Alan. I can't take your glory.
There are two specific areas. I mean, what we left with now is certainly long-term projects, and it does take a little bit of a longer time to get them going. But I can report on two things. The project budgeting, we set out a little while ago to say we're going to change the methodology, and I might be a little bit eager by putting the green now, but I think we've actually have a bit of the methodology, and it does work, and we can institutionalise that going forward. So I have put a green there. Maybe next month when we come to approve the project budget, you might think otherwise. And then the other project really is around the internal control review that got added on not so long ago. And I think in terms of the work we've done in preparing for this meeting, we've actually done. I'm quite pleased with the framework, and I think it'll work going forward. So that becomes a green. We've got to. There's some yellow. There's obviously some red there, which is costing the annual renewal plans. That is something that we have to really think about going forward. And the other oranges are we just slowly getting there. For example, on the staff timesheets, you'll see that under other projects. We really wanted to have that fully functional. It's an integrated leave system. It's our loan alerts and everything else. And technology is just is a constraint for us because we can't put anything else on our server at the moment. So it's I'm dependent on third parties there to get that done. The other one that really is catching me out a little bit is VAT. I'm always conscious of that. I have to restructure our whole chart of accounts to do that, and I'm just trying to work out ways. I have tools that I use that do all the financial reports that I had paid stage to develop, and I don't want to mess the integrity of those reports up because they really are good. But we just have to sort that out, and I've taken the files home, and I will be doing that with one of the, hopefully towards the end of this month, we'll have a first batch at restructuring the chart of accounts.
I think at personnel we mentioned that you shouldn't be taking work home, you should be dividing your work-life matters, but
no, well, it's what we do is sometimes the SMT we just go work at home to isolate ourselves from interruptions.
Yes.
So it really is easier to do that when you're sitting in the office. Your productivity is not as high as it is when you're sitting and locking yourself up at home.
Yes, Councillor Cannon.
Going down to your little red one.
Yes.
I don't think that's going to be an easy job.
It's not.
I think we started a few years ago. We started budgeting for everything, and then it was for some reason it stopped. But each year, money was put aside. I think I went to the I'll go by the toilets because that was quite a big budget we had there, and because it was so big, and we were still adding to it, you was allowed to take some out and put it somewhere else. That's fine. But when we're looking at all our other equipments, as soon as you buy something big, then you've got to think, well, how am I going to replace this in 10, 15 years' time? And I think that's where the council needs to start to get into that stage now, because we know the trouble with the play parks. I'm not sure how much is the budget. 45,000. You've got 11 play parks. That is nothing. You couldn't. If something bad happened, you couldn't cover them 11 play parks, could you? So I think somewhere along the line we need to get to that stage where actually we are putting so much away each year so that the items that we've bought can be replaced.
And I look forward to you sharing those sentiments with each of the committees that you all sit on, because the committees are responsible for their budgets, they are responsible for setting those budgets. It is only when everything comes together we review it overall and make those recommendations to full council.
Well, I have very few go on the committees that I do sit on, and I say about the future, because I am one for the future.
Any further questions or queries, please? Duly noted, and congratulations on 2 greens.
yes.
So we move on to 76621 correspondence, please, Alan.
We haven't just. Well, what we did receive subsequent to the last meeting was the latest Barrett and Cook schedules. I have distributed those. They are dated the 5th of January, but I promise you we don't get them on the 5th or the 6th of January. We get them quite a number of weeks after that when they've done all the reporting. So those were distributed last week. It is in terms of reference to this committee that you do receive them. So due to the good prompting of the chairman, I am now put kind of hopefully institutionalise that into my procedures, and we actually do that regularly. But otherwise, it's now the correspondence.
Any questions on that at all? Okay, then moving on to 767-21 even. Committee officers update, Alan.
The only thing to report on is we appointed new internal audits, which went through this particular committee. We had a starting meeting yesterday. If you see that I've got even less hair than I had, you'll know why. So they basically set out all the information that they require, and we've tried to set a date to have everything done to table at the May meeting of this particular committee to have all the audit information ready. So we're working towards that particular target.
Any questions or queries on that?
No, that's fine.
Super. So 768-21 community engagement to discuss and agree any consultation or media release required. Is there anything that you have a burning need to make sure that the public of Thetford are aware of?
Not at this time. I think year end will be. Is it mayor making? Or the
So
year
we'll
end?
have the
I'm
year
not sure
end,
what.
we will then have the AGAR, and then there will obviously be the electors' rights to review the accounts. So obviously once that kind of has its own process, and there are specific dates that we have to hit for that, and due notice periods. So obviously whilst we recommend that, that is a full council responsibility. Okay. In that case, I call this meeting closed. Thank you very much for your time.